Welcome to the Growth Fire podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi there, I'm Mark Reifmath, the host of the show, where I feature inspiring business leaders from various backgrounds and industries willing to share their perspectives on healthy cultures and motivated teams. Past guests have included Sean Magenis, the former global president and COO of YPO. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly encourage it. It's a really, really good one. This episode is brought to you by Spinutech. Spinutech is a premium digital growth agency that specializes in revitalizing lead generation strategies and accelerating online sales for top brands. To learn more, go to spinutech.com. All right, today's guest, I am super excited about, and I know that this is going to continue in a sequence of amazing guests that we've had. Scott Mordell. Scott Mordell is a strategic global business leader with more than 30 years of CEO and C-suite experience, revitalizing businesses and driving sustainable growth. He currently provides strategic business counsel for leaders through Forrader Group and serves on multiple boards. Scott is more widely known from his previous role as the CEO of YPO, also known as Young Presidents Organization. YPO is a global leadership organization of more than 31,000 chief executives in more than 140 countries who are connected by the shared belief that the world needs better leaders. YPO members' companies are diverse across industries and add more than $9 trillion in revenue annually. During Scott's tenure as YPO's longest-serving CEO, YPO membership grew more than 50%, expanded its global reach by 20% while achieving record member retention rates greater than 95%. YPO members claim YPO as the number one reason members change their views on leadership. In 2022, YPO presented Scott with its first ever individual outstanding leadership award. Team members rated Scott in the 95th percentile of CEOs on Glassdoor. That is an impressive intro. So I'm very excited to welcome you, Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here. And thank you for your YPO membership, my friend. It's a wonderful community.
Well, as I shared with you in our pre-interview, it's been all the things that were just mentioned. It's been transformational. It's been life-changing on a personal level, a professional level, family level. So I know I said this to you, but to say it publicly, thank you for your leadership. That was in the time that I joined, and it's just been nothing short of amazing for me.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you today.
All right. Our first question, it's a fun one. When you wake up in the morning, you're walking to your desk. Most of us walk to our home desks or wherever. What would be that walk-up song or entrance song playing in your head?
It's always music for me. My walk-up song would be a song called Safe and Sound by an LA pop band called Capital Cities. And so I've actually used it as my walk-up song previously. And it says it all. I mean, we should be safe and sound, and that's a big part of leadership.
Awesome. Love it. I love when there's good reason behind it. And you were very quick to what that would be. So that's great. All right. You've got a very colored background in YPO. You were a member and then obviously transitioned into leadership. But maybe let's rewind to that beginning. Why did you join? Was there somebody that was, in your life that was kind of influenced that and nudged you? I know that happened for me. So just talk about your YPO journey of how you initially got in.
Oh, absolutely. I got promoted to be CEO of Arlington International Racecourse in Chicago in 1995. And this was a family-held business conglomerate owned by the Duchossois family. And both the founder, Dick Duchossois, and his son, Craig Duchossois, very, very active YPO proponents. And Craig Duchossois encouraged me to join. I resisted it. I didn't really think I fit. And finally, a little while later, he suggested, he said, Scotty, you better join YPO or I'm going to fire you. Okay. And now I know he wasn't going to fire me, but at the same time, that was the nudge that I really needed. And it's been transformational for me as well, Mark. So it's ever since then, it's just been extraordinary.
Okay. So you joined, you got in a forum right away, I assume?
Yes.
How many forums have you been in? How many different forums have you been in over your career?
Well, that first forum I joined, I am still in. I've joined another forum since then because I changed chapters along the way. And I've got a handful of ad hoc forums that I participate in. It's a wonderful format for learning and sharing. And I'm just really, I won't say addicted to it, but I'll always have it in my life.
So oddly, I'm in multiple forums as well, which some people are kind of shocked to hear. They're like, "What? You're in multiple? I didn't know that was a thing." But I'm in my local one as well as a national one, and kind of international in some regards. We have a gentleman from the Dominican Republic and a gentleman from Canada, but it's all agency specific individuals, and I love them both, or the different ones for different reasons. But I think that's great that you're in multiple ones too, and it's something I encourage other YPO members to do as well, is to get into multiple ones.
It's great. We can all use some peer learning where people can bring different lenses to whatever our situations are, and so they can be topical or they can be just general, is you suggested, but
Right.
it's perfectly fantastic.
Okay, so the question a lot of YPOers have is, what's your best only in YPO experience? And I can only imagine you've had quite a few more than I have. But if there's one you're comfortable sharing, what would be an only in YPO experience that has really resonated with you and stuck with you over the years?
Oh, there really are just so many. But the first one that comes up is I've always been struck by the goodwill that people express for each other, even when they don't know the people involved. I had a friend who was traveling in Europe, in Italy specifically, on one of those semesters abroad. And his very first night, he went out and did what he shouldn't do, stayed out alone and came home alone. And unfortunately, he was attacked, and he was in the hospital the very next day. And of course, his parents are distraught, not a YPO family at all, and just like, well, what can I do to help? So, a handful of calls, and a YPOer stepped up, and Shai Masan, he deserves all the credit in the world. He took this young man under his wing, and really the family, and just went incredible out of his way, because he lived in Milan and this situation was in Rome. And I've just always been just so struck at the power of YPO in terms of people helping him. And so that young man never survived his injuries, but he was able to come home before he passed on. And it was all because of the work of Shai and a whole number of YPOers in Italy who did not know the young man at all. That just sheer goodwill is to me is ultimately the spirit of YPO.
Yeah. So you're really describing something I think that is, it's been, one of my forum mates has said, we're gas can buddies. You call me no matter when and where, and I'm going to bring you a can of gas. But I think that can be extended even more broadly. And you're really illustrating a good example of that. That's a very unique only in YPO experience of leveraging. I always say the trust wall goes down right away. People are just, willing to help and jump in. That's a really awesome story. Okay. So when you started your career, you probably had some views on what corporate culture meant to you, what core values meant from a company. As you think about that, how has, just over your career journey and even in YPO, how has that shaped and influenced your views on that?
Thank you. I grew up in a little bit more of a traditional time where the idea of the CEO was more command and control, now it's collaborate and influence is really what the world looks like right now, and it should, and because people are more motivated when they're collaborated with and they're treated equally as opposed to when they're commanded to do something. It's a great lesson actually, because Dwight Eisenhower, that great millennial leader back in the 50s, he had this quote that said, "Leadership is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it." Okay. And that idea of workers or individuals or teammates really self-selecting into the task at hand is ultimately what it really takes. And so in the YPO environment, where there's so many volunteers, more than 10,000 CEOs volunteering, and in my CEO scope, I had more than 90 different member-led governance groups and committees participating in what they were doing. And none of them wanted to work on Scott's plan. Okay. They all want to work on their plan. And so this idea that consensus is a constant effort, that alignment and enthusiasm is a constant effort, and ultimately one of the real goals and purposes of a leader is really that. And so that's been a big evolution of change, and now it's a primary emphasis for me.
Yeah. So, when you think about working in the corporate space versus for YPO, were you able to keep your core values, like the filter and even how you looked at culture, similar, or was there adjustments made because of profit, not profit, stuff like that?
Well, actually, the big difference between profit and not profit was really the sense of cause and mission that was really amplified in YPO, because this idea of becoming your better self and creating a better community was inherently mobilizing for some folks, as opposed to in for-profit. There's always a little bit of skepticism about where do the profits go and who's getting it, all the rest of that. But beyond that, people are people. And so my values didn't change at all. I've been very, very clear about my personal sense of integrity, my respect and compassion for others, my curiosity. I'm always wanting to see what's next, and a sense of accountability, that I'm accountable for what I do and don't do, and as are you. And so those have been my cores, and trying to stay true to that all along. How we execute them within the structures that are there, within the mission that's ahead of us. Obviously, that's the art of leadership, and quite frankly, where so much of the fun is.
Yeah. So a friend of yours told me I should ask you about, from a leadership perspective, an experience you had as being an ice hockey goalie and how transformational that was for you and from a leadership perspective. So I'm really excited to hear the story. I know nothing more than aside to ask you about it.
Well, I was a simple kid, grew up in Detroit, and hockey was one of the big sports that we all played. And I started to play hockey late in terms of playing on ice. And when I was coming along, there was a big suggestion that you should skate with the rest of the players, because that's how you're going to learn the game. And all I wanted to do was be a goalie. Okay, just because why? The goalie gets to stay out on the ice the entire time. Goalie never comes out, and two, the goalie always matters. If he or she does well, it's great. If he or she doesn't, well, there's accountability in that. And so I learned that having the entire game in front of me the entire time was really fun for me, because I could start to see the whole picture. And I found that whole picture mentality really carried me into all my classes I took in school. I wanted to kind of boil it down to one page, that if I could do that, I could understand it. I always wanted to keep it simple, to see the whole scope. And so in that, it's really guided me to want to see the whole before I'd make any decisions on the specifics. And so it's I'm still playing goalie at heart. Sometimes the puck comes at you when you don't see it, and sometimes you can see it. But to me, it's a great metaphor for my life.
I love that. I probably exhaust athletic and sporting analogies a little too much at work, but those who get it, and it's an easy language for me to speak through. So I love that, and that's a really good analogy. I've never played ice hockey, but that's a really good one. I'm glad Sean asked me gave me that little tidbit to mention. Okay, so let's now kind of transition to your CEO, and we've talked a little bit about it, but of YPO, and you were there much longer than most CEOs. And so, and I would also say you grew it, you challenged things, the status quo wasn't acceptable anymore. You grew membership, retention went up, you dealt with COVID. Let's dig into some of those things. I'm really curious of just your journey there. And it was a bit of a roller coaster. You got a lot of challenges, but a lot of great stuff came out of it.
Absolutely. And there are many different challenges, and for-profit and not-for-profit businesses along the same time had many different challenges as well. I just found for me as a leader that it's never about me. and this idea, especially at YPO, where there's so many volunteers and they're all CEOs, and certainly many of them are convinced they can do my role better than me, which is possible as it would go. But this idea that was, once they're talking about me, we're missing the point, right? It's like, what does Scott want? What is this? It's like we've missed it. It's not about the leader. It's about the mission. It's about the goals. It's about the people doing the work, and really kind of going forth with that. So I thought it was quite fascinating to be called by many a leader of leaders. But I feel like consciously my leadership tactic was not to make it about me, but really to make it about the work and make it about the others, and not to be totally selfless and totally like a wallflower, but really sometimes you lead from behind, sometimes you lead from the middle, but every now and then you have to lead from way up front. But really it's got to be about the mission. And so subjugate the ego to the mission, and if you can check that every single day, you're doing phenomenal things.
Yeah. When you got the call to take this role on, did you resist it? Were you excited? I mean, that's a big shift for people. So, and it's a unique opportunity. What was your process when you were considering that?
Well, thank you. they went through this big search process as it would go, and it's a global search process. There were several hundred candidates that somehow it whittled through the funnel, and I came out the other end. Okay, and now I don't know why I came out the other end compared to the other folks, but there's a lot of let's just pick one type things going on. But I came through, and part of me, candidly, Mark, was like, well, I expect to get it. Why would I apply for a role that I don't expect to get? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. But on the other hand, realizing just the sheer scope and scale of the work as I started to onboard and really kind of go wider, it became both very, very intoxicatingly fun. I could see the fun, but then also a bit daunting too. And so I'm always balancing the daunting versus enthusiasm. That's part of the fun. But it was a great ride, and literally from the very beginning. And some of my best lifelong friends are going to come out of this experience. So I've got nothing but fond memories.
Awesome. That's a unique perspective. Okay, so culture is important to you. Core values are important to you. How did you ring that bell louder? I don't know that it was in a bad state by any means, but knowing that it was really important to you in your tenure at YPO, how did you really put an emphasis on that?
Yeah, thank you. It's really in the interview process. So I don't know how many, if you or many of your listeners have done, but I wrote up my own sense of leadership principles. Okay, and I wrote them out there on one page, shockingly, right? And they fit very clearly. And when I was interviewing with the board of YPO, I said, "This is who I am. Okay, this is Scott in a box. Okay, if these intentions work well with you, then I'm the right person. If not, then let's agree that I'm not the right person. And every year, I'm going to evaluate myself based on these principles. Okay, and I got to hold myself accountable. And so I was very unorthodox at that time to share something like that. And I also shared it with my team and my team members, and asked them to hold me accountable to those principles, which are very, very easy, Mark. They're whatever we do on purpose with purpose. Okay, to align the organization and its shareholders to something that's great, that is a great cause for society. Okay. And then 2, provide a company environment where people can do their very best work. 3 is relentless focus on learning, execution, and achievement. And then finally, serve with a passion for others to succeed. Those are the basic 5 principles. Got little explanations to them, but that was really it. And stay true to that, because if I stay true to the mission and I stay true to these principles, everything else in between is just aligning along. And I found that a really good guide for me.
Awesome. Good stuff there. Talk to me about some of the, let's say, difficult decisions you had to make in your tenure. And I know COVID is one of them, but I'm sure there's others there. You pushed the boundaries of comfortability probably for the existing membership. So increasing membership by 50%, that's a lot of pressure on the system. Are there decisions along the way that were hard to make, but you knew they were right to make and kind of had to really advocate hard for them?
Yeah. Sometimes leadership is not making the best decision, but it's making the least bad decision. Right. So, when doing that, you have to choose like what's going to be the principle of your decision. Is it going to be making the most people happy? Is it, what's the principle of where you're going, so that you can defend your decision? Mm-hmm. And literally my first day at work, okay, we had a big conference in 2011. It was called the Global Leadership Conference at the time. Mm-hmm. And Julian Assange was showing up at this conference via video because he was in house arrest in Europe. And he was going to show up on the agenda. And we also had former President George W. Bush on the agenda, okay? And now not on the same day, different days, but ultimately the way it turned out was, former president was not going to share the agenda with somebody who the United States considered a giant terrorist. And it was just going to be inappropriate. And we had to decide, what do we do? I mean, this event was happening in the United States in Denver. And what do we do? Well, we chose the least bad decision for us, but ultimately one that was rooted in our principles, which is we're about open expression of ideas and idea exchange. And we're not about telling people what to think. We're about allowing people to think for themselves. And so we chose to keep Julian Assange on the agenda. And George W. Bush, regretfully to us and understandably, declined, and he dropped off of the agenda. And so we had some very upset members in the United States, some very upset members everywhere, and we had some very happy members in places. And so the only way I could reconcile the unhappiness with the happiness was to recognize that we had to stay true to one of our organization's principles, which is what we did. And so that's an example where how do you like to start your role having so many people unhappy to begin with, right? But at the same time, it was the right thing. And we had a lot of our board and our chairman and everybody were very, very supportive of the fact that we had to honor the principles of why we were formed.
So I have a saying that I love to run our company by, and that's we hire, fire, lead, manage, and make decisions using our core values. If you have any problem, you throw it against those core values and you see which ones are misaligned, and it creates a starting point. So I love how you're illustrating it was a principle that you stuck to, and that was what you used to make the decision, as opposed to let it being emotional or opinion based. You went back to here's our driving guidelines and principles, and boom, that's how we're going to make the decision. And that creates a great talk track when somebody challenges you on it. Why did you make this decision? Why this versus that?
Right. And and kudos to you, Mark, for creating that discipline for yourself and your organization. But it's also the example of the action and the rationale and what happens next that actually becomes more powerful. After that event, those first several years after that, when that incident was very fresh in people's minds, people realized, hey, we're here to learn. We're here open-minded. And I think that inspired many of our chapter learning officers, many of our chapter event developers to really stretch themselves, because it showed what was important to us as an organization, what was important to our quest. And that example, you cannot underestimate the power of the example, even beyond the initial decision and rationale.
So what I'm hearing there that I think is really interesting is, like you said, you're leading an organization that, well, yes, there's team members and employees, of the organization, but you're really leading so many more people than that. And that decision helped influence based on the culture you were creating and living and adhering to, and the core values that were there, really pushing them throughout all of the volunteers as well, which I think that as a leader, we have a wake. It can be a good wake and a disruptive one, or it can be a wake of positive influence. And that wake you created from that decision sounds like it was a very positive wake that rippled throughout the organization, both on the probably team members as well as those volunteers. So I think that's a really great example of that.
Thank you. And I like the wake analogy, Mark, because part of a good wake is one that's very consistent, that spreads around just kind of in a straight line. If you're zigging and zagging in your wake, all you're doing is creating waves that the pattern's hard to discern. Okay. And so the values help you keep your wake steady, because your values don't change. And so as long as you're aligning to those values, I think the ripple out effect becomes pretty powerful, because it's consistent, it's reliable.
Yeah. So, if you can humble brag, what were some decisions or things you did that helped drive that growth? What was the fire that you lit with people on your team and the volunteers to really drive that growth?
Well, it was really ultimately, I think, just belief in the mission and the role of the volunteers' role in the mission. I recruited some people personally, but the number of people I recruited personally, was not a rounding error on the growth that we had. It was our team members and so many members around the world actually doing the recruitment and doing the encouragement. And so having an organization that's true, that can articulate itself, makes you have to believe in that. And so I think my role was very much one of really allowing the platform, allowing the mission, and allowing the sheer inspiration of those already committed to kind of do their thing and not get in the way. And so in that sense, that was all very much the goal. And the big discussion in YPO wasn't just to grow. It's not grow in any way. It's always what we would call quality growth. Do these people really qualify as peers, as leadership organization peers with the rest of us? And that was always a check and balance. Some members thought we were growing too fast. Other members thought we should grow faster. And finding that line between quality and the right kind of addition that we can have is really the trick. And so I just felt all I need to do is honor my values, honor the mission, honor the opportunity for people to do that, and the results come out. And that's really what happened.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. When you think about a healthy chapter, and you've seen probably very healthy ones and probably very unhealthy ones, what would you use as the characteristics? And I'm going to assume that this kind of also leads back to culture and core values that you were kind of adhering to, but describe what a healthy chapter looks like.
Well, a healthy chapter is it's got a number of different members in it. There's some people say the optimal sizes, but a lot of them depends on the local market where you are. A market like Chicago's got multiple chapters, and a market like Western Michigan, where I'm right now, only has one chapter. And so sometimes there's different dynamics. So the chapter ends up having its own personality. And I think the common commitment of among the members relative to what the chapter experience is supposed to be is very important. And beyond that, the accountability. Mark, if you and I are in a chapter together and I decide, to blow off 3 events in a row and you never miss me, we don't have much of a connection, right? So, but if I'm not there for a little while and you say, hey, Scott, where you been? Come on, this event coming up is really great. You should be here. I want to do this event with you. Now I'm feeling an accountability, a sense of connection to folks, and I should do the same for you as a chapter member. But a good chapter has that critical mass of size to where everybody's not worrying about, do we have enough money to do a learning program, or who's going to be chapter chair this year because we don't have enough people to kind of do it. There's a critical mass, which is typically, in my view, a chapter between 60 and 80 people is probably the real sweet spot of size. Although the chapter I led in Chicago was 180 when I was leading it. So there's dynamics all the way around that can actually work.
Right. That's awesome. I'm in Iowa. We're a combined with YPO Gold and YPO, so we're about 120, 130 total,
okay,
but about 75-ish YPO members. So we're right in that sweet spot, and it is a good number. Everybody. There's still new members to be had, but it's a good balance. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so COVID, challenging decisions were to be made. The GLC, the global leadership meetings were about to take place in San Diego. I was actually on my way. We were having our chapter retreat, my national forum retreat. We're going to meet there and then go to some of the events and stuff. And COVID blows up, and we got to deal with it. So tough decisions, again, there's a lose-lose in the decision you have to make. So, talk us through your mentality through that.
Yes. And so we were having our biggest event literally right at the beginning of COVID, it was early March. We were having an event in San Diego with a little over probably 4,000 CEOs total who were going to be there. And we wanted to do it. And literally, some members were in the air in transit already there. And finally, studying things on the ground and talking to the hotel infrastructure, the county health infrastructure, and everything else. And it was clear that the protocols weren't developed enough to know, how we would even handle an outbreak should it happen at our event. And so we ended up doing the really hard thing, which is just to say, this is a really bad idea right now. And so the YPO Global Board of Directors and our chairman at the time, Elizabeth Zucker, were just wonderful about, okay, we have to support that principle of the safety of our members are the most important things we can do, the safety of our stakeholders, the safety of our community. And this is not the time we need to be doing this kind of event. So we canceled the event, took quite a bit of heat at the time because we were a little ahead of the cancel events kind of thing. And there was a smaller event in Boston that Biogen was hosting. Literally, that was the same week. They went on with their event, and they've been tagged because so many of their folks went back to different countries. They got tagged as a super spreader event. And our event was a multiple in size. We had people from, I think, 80 or 90 countries coming to this event. And I'm really glad that we didn't have our name and our brand, and quite frankly, the health impact of COVID at the time spreading around the world because of what we did. So it was a very hard decision because the goal of every CEO is to finish the plan, and it was really hard not to.
And I think there's something else. There's an element of good leaders are able to also make quick decisions. If you take too long to make a decision, it muckies things up. this, you had to make a quick decision, but man, there's a lot of data, a lot of information to try to deal with. So I commend you for, again, using those principles to make the decision. You just used another example of, here's one of our values that we're going to make decisions against. And that really made it easier and removed some emotion, because I'm sure there were a lot of opinions that were out there. And, I was actually relieved when it happened. I was kind of like, okay, it was because nobody knew. We were all kind of trying to figure it out. And,
Right.
so it's easy to now look back and go, oh, easy decision. But in that moment, no, you didn't. You knew not even a tenth of what we know today. You knew like 0.01% of what we know today. So again, thank you for those tough decisions. What advice would you give a new member? Somebody just joins, they're a great leader. Obviously, they've met the qualifications, but how do they get the most out of YPO and have it influence their core values, make them stronger, and the culture and all the other things?
It's whether it's YPO or something else, it ends up being very much the same kind of advice or counsel, which is you don't join an organization to get mail, okay? And you don't join an organization to just put it on a resume or on a list of organizations. I mean, that's not the reason to join an organization. You join an organization to contribute and to get back. And so my advice always is to get involved. Okay, get involved in chapter leadership. Get involved in an event. Go attend some events and meet some people. Feel it out, and just keep curious and keep trying to find ways to get exposed to things. The best friends I have from YPO and the best learning I have from YPO came from building the relationships by working in common cause with them. I always learn something drinking a glass of wine with somebody at reception, but it's not a very deep conversation. But when I see somebody like you over and over again, because we're planning an event and I find to figure out what's going on in your life, what's going on with your family, what's going on in your business, we have some of those side talk, we start talking about our principles, about what we're trying to put together. I learn more from that, and we build a bond because we have a shared experience, far better than just the transactional sharing of information. And so to me, that's always been the most powerful validation and value that I've gotten, whether I'm in an organization or in a association such as YPO.
Yeah, I think we talked about this when we first met. But YPO, to me, it's as a leader, there's so much. We're the duck on the pond. The paddles are kicking really hard, and people don't always see that. But being balanced in all facets of your life is really critical to be the best version of yourself as a leader, and YPO can provide that. And I know for me, that's been a critical piece, is making sure that I'm good on the family front, I'm good on the personal front. Business is business. we're going to take blows constantly, and that's what we do as a leader. But if we're off balance in one of those areas, it can really impact our performance, and the teams that we lead will see that. And so, if you think about all the leader of leaders, what's maybe a couple of things you learned from other leaders while you were in YPO that maybe you still carry forward with you to this day?
Well, thank you. First, one big lesson is really managing your own personal energy. Okay, and so we're generally, you'll find a CEO, you'll find a leader who's very goal driven, who wants to achieve and wants to build. And you can lock in on that build, and you can allow other parts of your life get compromised. Okay, and so we had some cycles of things to where managing personal energy is quite a challenge, and it really comes back to also the flip side of that, Mark, is what you were just describing, is recognizing that our employees are trying to manage their energy too. Okay, and so. Yes, YPO is a whole person leadership organization. And so we take into account the personal and the family and the rest of that stuff. But as leaders, we need to do that for our teams too. Pew does a research, and they do the sources of meaning, and they publish it every single year. And guess what? Job comes in like 1/4 of how meaningful like somebody's family or somebody's closest friends and relations are. So when you and I are sitting in a lunchroom and we're talking to our teams, and we're saying, "Hey, everybody, we need to win this quarter, and here we go." It's like, well, that's not the most important thing in their lives, okay? And so we need to have that empathy as leaders to recognize that they've got other needs. The teammates have other needs and other things going on. The empathy that we bring to that is very powerful. And the only way I can begin to appreciate that is to manage my own energy. And so that's one good example of just a lesson that's come to me from several chairmen that I've worked with. And in reflection, being away from it, I realize now how important that is.
Yeah, good one. Really good one. I've been on this kick of saying, I think, the way we led before COVID, the way we led during, those are two different ways. And then now even post COVID or whatever we're calling it, we have to lead differently too. And I think what people really want is they need to be led as a holistic person. Life and work, it's all meshed together even more than it was 3 years ago. We're at 3 years, hard to believe, but it's even more so blended together. And so as a leader, we can only focus on the business part if we want to, but I think you're really leaving a lot on the table of getting the best out of that person, because you had a bad morning. Can I take something off your plate? Can I help you? And being empathetic, I think it's a healthier way to lead, quite honestly, is leading that whole person. And that's what you were kind of describing, some of the benefits, but it's a good reminder to leaders too, is our energy, the wake of our energy can be very positive or very negative. And that positivity of that and being understanding is so critical. So that's a really good example. That's a really good lesson you learned there.
Thank you. And kind of a corollary of this is so obvious, but when you think about it, it might make you think a little bit differently. But a leader needs a follower, right? And so much of when we talk about leadership, and there's 60,000 titles on Amazon right now, and who knows how many different McKinsey and Bain and other articles that are flying around about leadership. And it's like, there's all this talk about leadership. And yet, wait a second, what makes a follower? Okay. And what makes a follower is I feel empowered. I'm developing my own sense of mastery to what I'm doing. I'm inspired by the people that I'm with and being led by, and I've also got a sense of a common cause and common mission. And so if you flip that beyond energy and empathy and all the rest of that stuff, it's just recognizing that allow people to choose to be followers, and people choose their own behavior. You don't get to tell them what to do. Really, they'll do it for a short time, but then they'll go do it someplace else. So what inspires them to follow your leadership, and that's always been a really compelling reflection for me, and also just an exclamation point on this idea of empathy. That if I'm not thinking about what my teammates really want out of this relationship with the employer, my leadership theories and philosophies don't mean a thing, because without their choice to follow, choice to participate, it doesn't work.
Right. I like to look at it as, I hope whether somebody's here for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, did they become a better person? Not just a better worker, a better professional, but did they holistically get better? Did we create an environment that personally made them better? Did they grow? Our first core value is we get better every day. It's this growth mentality. It's learning. You don't have a fixed mindset. And so that goes, we challenge people. It's not just about the work person too. Did you get holistically better? And that's something that I think you can separate from work and be proud of as an organization as well. So, Scott, this has been great. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think I should, or that you think you'd like to share?
Well, one more point, really, and it comes down to this idea of leadership and the organizations we participate in or work with or work for is hope and optimism. Okay. Blind optimism it can be perceived as delusion. Okay. But the role of the leaders is to ultimately continue to provide the context for people to be hopeful that tomorrow is going to be better than today, that we can make the world a better place, that our company can make lives better. And without that hope, there's despair. And with despair, there's no achievement whatsoever. Okay. So the optimists inherit the world. The optimists are the entrepreneurs. The people who change the world think that tomorrow can be better than today. And I think it's very important as part of any leader to be able to point to the future and point to what we can make together, and really help people find that sense of hope and find that sense of I can contribute to that, because that's the energy that allows people to take the hits that come in the meantime, that allows them to really kind of pace themselves. And I don't think we talk enough about that in the leadership world, because we're talking about what you do and how do you mobilize people. But we're all looking for a reason to be hopeful. We're all looking for a reason to be positive that what we're doing is going to matter. And I think that's a big part of the voice of a leader.
That's really, really good. Scott, I'm going to end with, I have a bit of confession. So I've done a lot of speaking engagements. I think I'm pretty polished in those environments, but I have to speak on a subject at the YPO the Global Marketing Summit for YPO in Atlanta at the end of May. And I tell you what, I don't get nervous. I'm pretty chill, laid back guy. Knowing the audience that it's going to, the expectations I've built up in my head of, leaders of leaders, all these, prominent people, I'm more nervous for this event than I would be for speaking to 500 people or 1,000 people. So, but I think that's also kind of a good feeling, knowing that you've got this really well-regarded audience. I'm super excited about it, but I am pretty nervous about it too, because knowing the caliber of the audience I'm speaking to.
Yeah, well, one, it's a sign it's important to you, right? If it's what you're saying. And two, you're going to connect. That's what matters more. We've all seen really polished, really great speakers, and sometimes we can't remember what they said. But I think you're going to be the kind of guy that can go up and just really connect and share what needs to be said. And so good luck to that. I hope it goes great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Scott, if somebody wanted, you're active on LinkedIn, any other ways you'd want people to connect with you if they wanted?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way. And if you want to post my website and all the rest on your bio and here, we can do that. But
excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to connect with anybody. I love talking about these topics and just love meeting new relationships.
Awesome. Scott, this is everything I expected it to be. I look forward to continuing our relationship and getting to know each other even better as well. But it's always good to, the experience you have is great. So thank you for sharing that. It's a very unique perspective, global perspective that you have being a leader of leaders. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Good luck to you and all your listeners.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.